Published, 2011 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the 25th of May 2018. Updated, 9:15 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the 26th of May 2018. All this week we have heard harrowing testimonies from the survivors of the Grenfell fire disaster, along with moving tributes from those who lost loved ones. The public inquiry into the blaze has listened to mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers and friends of the dead tell their heartbreaking stories. The family of chauffeur Mohamed Neda told of his last phone message, in his native Afghan language, "Goodbye. I hope I haven't disappointed you. Goodbye to all." All this week we have heard harrowing testimonies from the survivors of the Grenfell fire disaster, along with moving tributes from those who lost loved ones. The public inquiry into the blaze has listened to mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers and friends of the dead tell their heartbreaking story. Some chauffeur lost his mother, sister, brother-in-law and their 3 daughters. He ran to the tower but was too late and watched helplessly as they burned to death. When he showed his phone footage of people trapped behind windows as the fire raged, 20 survivors attending the inquiry were so overcome they left. Eleanor Tomlinson, aka Demelza, was bumped off in the first episode of the next series. Its 7 million fans wouldn't bat an eyelid. The woman who plays Aidan Turner's wife in Poldark insists she's worth equal pay. First, if Eleanor Tomlinson, aka Demelza, was bumped off in the first episode of the next series, its 7 million fans wouldn't bat an eyelid. Second, she is a supporting actress and Turner is the star. Next, she'll be asking for the show to be called Mrs. Poldark. The overwhelming sense of grief and injustice has been palpable. Grenfell was a terrible tragedy that claimed the lives of 72 people. The cause would seem to be a mixture of incompetence, dereliction of duty, possible illegality and callous cost-cutting. It is the job of the inquiry, chaired by Sir Martin Morbick, to sift through the rubble of charred evidence and deliver justice for the families. But, given its already highly charged nature, is giving the families so long to air their emotions the best way to conduct what needs to be a clinical search for the truth? It goes without saying that my heart breaks for those afflicted by Grenfell, but this week a letter to the Times caught my eye. It was written by Michael Jones, a solicitor who attended the inquest into the Afghan disaster in 1966, when a landslide from a colliery waste tip engulfed the Welsh village's primary school, claiming the lives of 116 children and 28 adults. Mr. Jones points out that the Afghan Tribunal judge, Lord Justice Edmund Davies, concentrated on the responsibility for the slippage of the tip, and did not spend days hearing the testimonies of the bereaved parents, nor were relatives given the chance to air their stories of loss at the inquest, where the coroner offered them only sympathy and explained he already had the evidence he needed concerning the dead. They were always the most unlikely of couples: Sir Philip Green's now heavily pregnant daughter Chloe, who inherited her father's looks, and the hot fell-in-turned model Jeremy Meeks. Now a wedding is planned. The wife Meeks dumped for Chloe has admitted defeat. Starting a family with a billionaire's daughter is the golden ticket, Melissa Meeks says. Maybe not. If it all goes wrong, Daddy is likely to treat the hottie worse than he did the BHS pensioners. Although the relatives were not pleased, Mr. Jones says he always thought the coroner right. Lamentation is not the purpose of an inquest, he says. These are different times, of course, in contrast to the stoicism of that age. Today, the need for public expressions of grief and outrage seem to have become part of modern life. But I can't help feeling Mr. Jones has a point. A degree of solace for the distraught families will ultimately come not from public grieving but from knowing why their loved ones died unnecessarily and who is to blame. That way another appalling tragedy might be avoided. The royal wedding was a wonderful celebration of British pomp and circumstance, attended by more than 3,000 police at a cost of £30 million. Did not warm the hearts of all Brits. A black friend told me, 3 young men were stabbed to death in London that weekend and not a copper in sight. Many are asking what next for Meghan's dignified mum, Doria Ragland. Given she and Prince Charles bonded so beautifully, and he has a bad back, perhaps the yoga teacher could take up permanent residence at Clarence House. Lovely to see Harry's ex's Cressida Bonas and Chelsea Davy at the chapel in Windsor, but sad we didn't get a glimpse of Meghan's former boyfriends. I guess they didn't have a pew big enough to seat them all. Meghan has engaged the services of the Queen's Assistant Private Secretary Samantha Cohen to guide her through her first months in the royal family. Evidently, she is going to proceed with humility. Of all the adjectives one could use about Meghan, humility doesn't instantly spring to mind. While I have every sympathy for poor Catherine Downey, who wrote chillingly in the Mail about how she was the victim of a banking scam, I have one question. When she was called by a lady from the NatWest fraud team who sounded a bit like my mum, very well spoken, why didn't the alarm bells ring? In all the times I've called my bank, I can't remember a single time when the person on the other end sounded like English was their first language. The Duchess of York recalled how she became secretary to art dealer William Drummond, who died recently. He explained, I would like someone 28 plus as my PA, then employed her. A bit cruel, I'd say. Even at her largest, Fergie was never more than a size 20. Westminster War's Ruth Davidson has described Theresa May's leadership as joyless and hectoring. The Scottish Tory leader may like cheering us up with stunts such as placing her ample bottom on the back of a rodeo buffalo, but is that really what we want from our PM while she's busy sorting out Brexit? Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt appears to support calls for a £2,000 a year hypothecated NHS tax on every household. But this won't be paid by every family, will it? It'll be paid by every working family, while the 3 million households out of work won't contribute at all. So once again hard-grafting people will foot the bill. Hardly very Tory, is it? Newsnight's Dower presenter Kirsty Wark wants to replace David Dimbleby when he steps down from Question Time. A horrible thought. Her dentist drill voice, not to mention her left-wing views, would keep us awake all night. Dimbleby is more effective than Temazepam. Is there a lesson for all troubled wives in the horrific tale of the serial sex sheet soldier who tried to kill his wife by tampering with her parachute? If you suspect your husband is playing around, don't go parachute jumping with him. I'd probably rule out bungee jumping, too. To ward off cancer we should eat no more than 3 portions of red meat a week, says a report. Poppycock. And in my defense, I cite one Dame Anna Wintour, glacial editor of American Vogue, who eats steak every day of her life. Nuclear Wintour is now 68 and looks as fabulous, fashionable, and scary as ever. Hopkins worse than Hannibal promoting his new BBC adaptation of King Lear, in which the monarch has an agonizing relationship with his daughter Cordelia. Anthony Hopkins reveals he hasn't a clue where his only child Abigail, 48, lives or even if she has children. They haven't spoken in 2 decades. Families split up, he says coldly. I don't care one way or the other. You don't have to love each other, sorry, but dads do have a duty to love their daughters, not just use them to publicize a TV performance. This horrible man makes his most famous character, Cannibal Hannibal Lecter, seem like a pussycat. At least it was only strangers whom Lecter ripped the hearts out of.